So a little bit about myself. My name is Yenny Cheung, and I'm originally from the city of Hong Kong, so pretty far away. Right now, I'm a software engineer at Yelp in Hamburg, so in Germany. Now, here's the menu for today. We're gonna go through an introduction, which is a video that is so hard-earned, the audio. So I interviewed a few of my colleagues along with my coworker, Nicola, and we asked them for their experiences in public speaking. Is this working fine? Okay. I interviewed them for their experiences in public speaking, and so hopefully that can get you in the mindset of thinking about why you want to do public speaking or what's your take on it. And then we're going to move on to why you should pursue public speaking. Why is that something that we want to talk about today? And then we're going to talk about, well, what if I'm afraid, right? How to overcome the fear. Next, we're going to talk about how to get better at public speaking. And realistically, where do we start? Now, without further ado, let's enjoy the video.
Hey, hi, my name is Mario.
Hi, my name is Rashik.
I'm Samuel.
My name is Cyriac.
I'm Nicola.
Oh, I'm Antoine.
Hello, I'm Birgit.
Hello, my name is Yasmin.
My name is Chidi Ebere Nadi. Short form is Chidi.
I've been working here at Yelp for about a year and a half now.
I'm currently a working student at Yelp.
I'm a product designer intern at Yelp in Hamburg office.
I'm kind of working in Yelp by a kind of long time and pretty liking what I'm doing. Mostly working on backend, but is also thinking on how to break stuff.
Android engineer, core mobile API team.
I work here at Yelp at the user operations team in the Hamburg office.
I moved to Yelp and Hamburg in Germany from Bangalore, which is a city in India, known as the Silicon Valley of India.
I'm a product designer at Yelp here in Hamburg, where we work on the business side of things.
I'm working as a product manager here. I have been working in the office for a pretty long time.
I work at Yelp as a software engineer.
And also studying computer science at the Technical University in Berlin.
I came here to Germany to actually explore different cultures, see how people live, work, eat, have fun, live life. So I got into public speaking about 3.5 years ago when I started talking at small conferences back in India. It was mostly cocoa heads, and so a bunch of us used to organize cocoa heads in Bangalore.
My experience with public speaking has so far been pretty limited. I mean, other than experiences on presenting something within the team or within the company has not really been exposed to the public world. Usually I'm so concerned on recording, and that's kind of one of the examples is more about also thinking of, okay, what I have to share with the community that is not already state in the world. Is like, is that new or is just something old and doesn't really make sense to invest energy to re-say that?
Is that like sort of a rhetorical question? Or I've been doing like a lot of talks in the last 3 or 4 years, and I think it's great. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, as a product manager, I do public speaking presentations once a quarter or every now and then. Basically in front of the office or sometimes also for some bigger audience, including the San Francisco offices.
It's great. So I was doing theater as a kid, so there's a lot of similarities, like this play and being in public, articulating your thoughts, being a little bit funny sometimes, engaging with the audience and everything.
Majority of my public speaking experience has been related to my profession, and I find that as I progressed in my career, more and more opportunities have presented themselves for me to speak publicly, like whether I want it or not. Talk to more junior people in the company about like what we're doing, like our tech stack. I've just had to be more comfortable with speaking to people publicly, yeah.
And I really like that feeling of people learning stuff and then attributing that to me. I think a few months ago I had somebody come up to me and she told me, hey, I was there 2 years ago when you gave that intro talk to Python, and like that was the first time I actually learned Python. And she was telling me, hey, that made me like start programming more, and now she got an internship at GitHub. So like this is like really awesome to hear.
Watch as they fall away.
Do you think you're funny?
I hope to be, but I'm pretty sure I'm not.
Every time before I start a talk, there's a lot of butterflies in my tummy. That effectively means I'm fairly scared. I guess it's the case with the most seasoned public speakers as well. Almost everyone pretty much has given me the same answer.
Yes. Just check the video.
I do feel nervous every time when it comes to the actual event, but I think that's just part of the game.
Most of the time for me, it's just like I either forget what I need to say or I just like freeze,
And weeks went by, but felt like hours. Seasons marched.
I was working on tickets and stuff at work, and it was like, yeah, that's normal, that's easy. And then talking to people, I was realizing that eventually that wasn't easy, that was eventually easy for me or easier for me. So maybe that is also a thing that I need to learn, that is understanding that not everything that I see is simple, and that everything that I don't think that is as hard as deserving to be discussed in front of people. Actually, it could be a nice topic to talk about.
And weeks went by, but felt like hours. Seasons marched.
Yeah, it's actually very hard. You would think as a meetup organizer that I get a lot of applications and I just filter them and choose the best ones. But most of what I'm doing is sourcing. So I look at other cities nearby and I look who spoke there. I look at the news in, design, because it's a design meetup, in my city, and I try to find who is doing something interesting. So it's a lot of sourcing and trying to convince people to either give a talk they have or build a talk especially for us.
So I think one of the things that I found really work for me is to stand in front of the mirror and give your talk.
I try to work on the way I brief.
Rehearse the same talk at least 3 times before I end up giving the talk anyway. It doesn't matter how large the audience is. Even if it's a 5 or a 6 member audience, it's still important that you do not break, so as to speak.
Do dry runs. Dry runs, dry runs, dry runs.
I think it helps when you prepare yourself a lot, like when you practice how you want to say certain things, because whenever I try to do a dry run, I notice a lot of like, okay, I don't really know how I want to describe this, or I don't know the English word for that.
Knowing that the first time you're going to speak, it's going to suck. So I think that's the best advice I got. My friend was like, he's been speaking for a long time. I think he's given hundreds of talks, and the advice he gave me is, Mario, your first talk's gonna suck. While it sounds very cynical to give such a piece of advice, the important thing that it did was for me to lower my expectations of the talk, and the talk actually was great.
I actually want to start by going to more conferences because like that would be like I think my first step, to just like see other people public speaking, see the kind of thing they're talking about.
I would just encourage people to just like jump in the pool rather than thinking how they are going to enter it through this ladder and everything. Like jump straight into this and you'll figure out how to swim.
All right, great. Hope you all enjoyed the video and found some stories that resonated a little bit with you, because definitely a lot of these stories resonate with me. So I think since my colleagues shared their idea on public speaking and how they got started, it's also fair for me to share a little bit about my background on public speaking. So a few years ago, back when I was in university, I was not half as keen in public speaking as I am right now. I remember having to do a 2-minute presentation, and I have to hold a cue card, one of these memos, and then I write down every single sentence I need to say on there with the punctuations, because if I don't put everything down, I'm gonna forget something. And whenever my professor asks a question, for sure, I'm not gonna be the one raising my hand because I don't wanna talk in front of the public. Something will go wrong for sure. So I've always been a little bit timid on the public speaking side of things. And that extended till my first job at Yelp. So back then, my manager gave me a piece of advice. a feedback. And he was like, hey, Yenny, I think you have interesting ideas to share with us. Like, how come you don't talk a little bit more in meetings? So I reflected a little bit on my experience, and yeah, like I agree with it. There are things that I wanted to share with people, but because I was afraid, so I didn't stood up, I didn't tell them about my idea. So at that point, I think that, well, this needs to stop. I need to face this issue and try to get over it. So rather than taking the path of trying to speak a little bit more at the next meeting, what I tried was I applied for a conference. Because you see, there are no backseats. You apply for it, you get in, you cannot say, I don't want to come. No, you have to go. So that was 2017. I applied for PyCon Germany. I think there are some organizers here as well. Yeah. But do me a favor, please don't look up that video on YouTube. It's still somewhere there. But still, like the point I want to make is, even if you're not like really great at public speaking, there are already some benefits that you can reap from it. So allow me to share some points with you. First of all, regarding the first point, right, for me to talk easier in the meeting. One thing I found out is if I'm more comfortable talking in front of like 300 people like here, it's also easier for me to share my feelings or ideas in front of the coworkers that I trust, like 3-5 people. So that's a great thing. I got that out of the way. And second of all, as I continue progress as a software engineer, I understand that doing well in this job is so much more than just sitting in a corner and code all day. It's a lot about talking to other people. So even if you don't want to become a manager or a project leader sometime, even if you just want to be an individual contributor, you still have to communicate. If you come up with this great design architecture that you want to pitch your colleagues with, well, you need to come up with some arguments. You need to convince them that this is a good idea, that this is maintainable, that it's cost efficient. It's a lot about communication. Now, next up is crucial conversations. So when I talk about crucial conversations, the first thing that comes into mind is like getting a raise. So that's like pretty important, no? So imagine this situation. You walk into the room, and you told your manager that, hey, I deserve a raise, and your manager disagrees. So that's like a tricky situation, isn't it? Or if you want to tell your colleague and give them the feedback that, well, I think your design just is not maintainable at all, like I don't think it's a good idea, and now you need to confront your colleague about it. So these kind of conversations is crucial conversations. Why is that? Because first of all, emotions run strong, like hopefully you don't get into a fight with your boss. Second of all, stakes are high. Like, it's pretty important, right? Especially getting a raise and getting promotions. So, you know what that reminds me of? Public speaking, a little bit, right? Because right now, I'm standing in front of all of you. I'm hella nervous, so emotions run strong. And second of all, stakes are high because I don't want to screw up in front of 300 people with a live stream. So there you go. So if you get these kind of practice, per se, I think like being put on the spot with your nervous system like doing crazy things to you, that actually helps you approaching these crucial conversations. Now, next up, since we're in the conference setting, like I'm gonna give this piece of suggestion because like I myself face it all the time as I'm an introvert. So I hate to come up to people and be like, oh, hi, I'm Yenny, and then you struggle to think about what to talk about. Very awkward situations here. Like, I want to meet people, but like half the time I just want to like stay in the corner and like hide myself. But the good thing is, if you're an introvert and want to meet people, you give a talk, and then afterwards people come to you and ask questions, so you don't have to do the like, hello, I'm Yenny thing. No more. So that's great. Now, I hope you're all convinced that there are a lot of benefits when it comes to public speaking. But what if I'm afraid? Yeah, well, me too. So like, let's go through some of the tips and tricks to help ourselves get back on our feet. So I have, well, first of all, you see I've interviewed my coworkers on their thoughts of public speaking. And at the same time, I've done a public speaking mentoring circle at the Grace Hopper conference. So here are the results that I've gotten from the attendees about why they think that it's a scary thing. So first of all, our heart racing. I can understand. It's a nerve-wracking experience standing in front of the crowd. In fact, I can take my pulse right now, but I'm probably too nervous to tell you how many heartbeats I have per minute. But I can tell you, like, my heart is beating very fast. And that's just unfortunate, you know, it is how the human body is built. When you're nervous, this adrenaline gets shot up, right? And then, like, all the blood goes to your legs because your instinct tells you to run away. But no, my brain wants to tell you a story. We want to do public speaking, but my body wants to run away. So this is a situation that you need to get accustomed with when you're doing public speaking. So one way to approach this is to acknowledge the fact that you're nervous, and then we move on, right? Like, because it's a normal reaction for public speaking. I think about the last time I did a talk. I felt exactly the same. I want to run away. But okay, like last time it was fine. Like, you know, like it was fine. And then I signed up for another talk. So this time it's going to be fine too. Next up, I want to cover something called finding your harbor. What I mean by that is thinking about something that you're really passionate in or something that you really like talking about. So once you talk about it, then you don't even think about where you are. You just get so hyped up and so into this topic. And for me, it's talking about myself, so you heard so much about me, and now I'm all calmed down. Next up, there's the power pose. I really like this one. For me, the power pose I like is having 2 feet firmly planted in the ground, right? That's how I feel confident. That's how I feel the power on stage. But I see some speakers, like, I don't even know how to do it. This is like for the whole time. Well, that's cool too, if that's gonna bring you confidence. I think the most important thing is not like how the audience will think about me. Like, if this brings you power, go ahead, do that. Like, feel confident and you'll give the best presentation. Oh, humor. This one is a little bit tricky. So, you know, like you do public speaking, and most people tell you you should be funny. The problem is, if you're not naturally a very funny person, if you don't really crack jokes a lot of time in your daily life, and suddenly on stage you have to crack a lot of jokes, that usually doesn't work. So, like, what I'm trying to say is, don't blindly imitate what you like about some speakers. Like, find the style that will work for you, and with that, you'll give the best presentations. Now, as Chidi mentioned in the video, he's afraid of forgetting what to say. Yeah, me too. It's a really, really scary thing when it comes to, like, you're on the stage and you forget what to say. But good thing is, we already went through some suggestions to calm ourselves down. So this is a list of things that can help us feel less nervous on stage, and hence there's a less chance for us to totally forget what to say. But what if I told you you can actually prep for screwing up on stage? Now, this is one thing we can do. We can rehearse for forgetting what to say. You know, you practice by yourself, right? Like when you do the talk and stuff. I hope you do that before the actual talk. I see sometimes when people stumble upon something, they forget, and they start the chrono again, be like, okay, next time I won't forget. But that's actually not very healthy, because this is the perfect chance for you to practice your comeback. You know, when you stumble, how do you get back on your feet, get back on that rhythm, and continue on? So that's something that you can rehearse for. Second of all, one thing that can be helpful is timing yourself. For example, if you have a 30-minute talk, try to aim for something 20, 25 minutes. Because if you prepare too little and you have to ramble through on stage, you're not sticking to what you've practiced, that increases your stress. Or if you overshoot, right, you're prepared for 30 minutes and then you're going over, you'll see that your nice facilitator here, like racing your 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that kind of thing really stresses you out. So try to time yourself well, and you can get rid of some stress. And the third thing is question and answer. A lot of people mention to me that they get really nervous when it comes to that, because it's something that you cannot prep for, right? What if an audience asks me a very, very strange question and I don't know how to respond? Well, good news is, since you're talking about this topic, I hope you're pretty interested in it, and hopefully you can ask yourself some questions that you're interested in. And at the same time, we'll also cover a little later to leverage on your feedback crew, someone that you can source these questions from so you can prepare them in advance. Or, last but not least, it's also okay to say you don't know about something. We'll also go through that a bit later. Rehearse for potential problems. But as you can see, like not all problems can be resolved. Like for example, just now we have a technical issue. But the things we can do, for example, is rehearsing the presentation without slides. What if it just didn't work out, projector didn't work, and you see nothing? Can the audience still follow through? Like, can you still deliver the same message? That's one thing, because sometimes it happens with Google Slides that, like, I don't mean Google Slides, it's a bad thing. Anyone works for Google here? Yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't mean that. But sometimes the Wi-Fi is not very good, and hence, like, some stuff doesn't load. So that's the problem. Or one time I tried relying too much on these speaker notes, right? As you can see, that laptop is right there, and my height is here. If I like look too much into the speaker notes, you won't see me. And that time was some similar situation where I have to scramble looking at my notes, and at the same time look at the slides. So I have to go like this and this the whole time, and that freaked me out. So sometimes try to prepare so that we don't need that as much. Another thing that we encounter very often is bad Wi-Fi, which is why we keep local copies of video and links, but unfortunately that didn't help with the situation today. And last but not least, bring all the adapters you have, because with the new Mac, you just need 10 adapters. But what if? What if I actually blank out on stage? Look, I just did a small social experiment with you all, because that was 8 seconds I was drinking the water, and you still seem that everything is fine, right? Like nobody looked at me like I went crazy. So that's great. So if you black out, you drink some water, nobody's even gonna notice that you blank out, unless you blank out, tell them, oh, I'm so sorry, I blank out for 8 seconds. Nobody's gonna notice. So that's a great thing. And second social experiment I wanna do with you here. Who here in the audience right now just really wants to see me screw up? Hands up. One, two, I look at you. Yes, we talk after. So, but okay, that aside, because I know them-ish. Yeah, but that aside, like, you can see the audience is supportive. They don't want you to fail on stage. They don't want you to lose control. Everybody is trying to help. And in fact, the worst case scenario I heard of is if you completely blank out, you told everyone that, sorry, I'm blank out, I cannot continue. What's gonna happen is people are gonna clap. They clap until you come back to your feet. So you know that's the worst thing that can happen. And that's really not that bad, right? Now, there are also some tips and tricks, right? Nobody has read your notes before. You can skip the slide, not talk about it, and nobody will ask you that many questions. Or as you say, as you see, right, drinking water is one way to buy you 8 to 10 seconds for you to regain your consciousness. Now, the third reason that is holding people back for public speaking is people are afraid of being exposed as a fraud. There are a zillion ways, elegant ways, to say, I don't know. You're going to say, well, that was a great question. Let's talk offline. Or like, oh, great question here. Who in the audience wants to answer this? Like a million ways. But, you know, jokes aside, I think either way, it's okay for you to say, I don't know, I'm not sure. That was a great question. I'll think about it. Because the point of giving a talk is not like you show off that you're the best, right? You don't have to be the best in a topic to give a talk about it. Otherwise, I think it's really boring for you, isn't it? Like, the way I see it, when you go to conferences, you present on something, you want to learn something out of it, right? I remember the first talk I gave on refactoring, especially when I first gave that topic. I cannot claim an expert because, you know, literally the idea came when my colleague commented something on my code review, I was like, oh, this is interesting, Python refactoring, I'm gonna look more into it. And that turned into a talk. But then, every time I gave that talk, I talked to the audience afterwards, and there are people who are more experienced than me, right, in Python refactoring. They sent me links, videos, different recommendations, and I gradually got better in this topic. So this is something I look for when I give a talk. Like, I want to source opinion. I want to learn more about this topic. So there's no shame in saying, I don't know. Now, this one is really dangerous. People think that they're not good enough to do something. Not sure if you're familiar with the concept of impostor syndrome, but this is basically a quick explanation. It's like if you think your ability is here, but your actual ability is there, and you keep on thinking that you're not good enough for something. Like everybody has their stuff together, like they're great, and I am the only one who is clueless. That's very dangerous because that prevents you from trying a lot of things that is within your reach, right? And I really like how Mario put it, right? Just your first talk will suck. It's okay, we'll get over it, right? And it's important to set the expectation for your first talk. You're not expecting yourself to be stellar for the first time, right? In fact, I tell you a little story. Back then, there was an intern at Yelp. We were talking about public speaking. So she told me, I'm never gonna try public speaking. And I was like, why? And she's like, you know, I wanna be like those speakers. They're on stage, they tell me anything and I'll go do it. They sell me anything and I'll go buy it. Okay, cool. But, you know, you gotta start somewhere. Like, as the saying goes, like, eyes on the stars, feet on the ground. Remember the feet on the ground part. You cannot reach your 50th talk if you don't start the first one. So we need to bear in mind that. But the actual question is, how good is good enough, right? So like, when should I be signing up for these conference speaking opportunities? You know what's good? We're at a conference right now. We can go to conference talks and see how other people talk, right? So that gives us a sense of, like an estimate of how good your talk needs to be. And I'm hoping if you go to some talks, you'll realize that not all the talks are that engaging to you. That's a great thing, because that topic that you think nobody will be interested about, maybe that could be a hit, because that talk made it. You have no interest in going to that talk, but that talk made it to a prestigious conference, so maybe your idea will make it too. Now, another question we think about is, why would the organizer pick me, like me out of all the people? How can I make my proposal stand out to these organizers, right? Now, there is a common misconception that like the organizers is just swimming in a million applications and they get to pick whatever they want. Well, that would be the ideal case, except as Antoine was mentioning, he's spending a lot of time sourcing, asking people to give talks, or even like curate the content for their meetup, right? So maybe if you just apply, they're actually looking for someone. You can ask the organizers here how many people they reached out to. So back to the second question on making your talk proposal stand out, right? One thing that might seem pretty obvious, but I think not too many people do it, is please look at the form first, the call for proposal form. Oftentimes they tell you what they're looking for, so try to match that. And one important thing to think about is what kind of talk format you want to apply to. For example, is it like a small lightning talk, medium one, 30 minutes, 45, workshop? So you can decide what fits you best. And I think this recommendation is ingenious. So Raphael, I literally digged it up from the Twitter thread. So he recommended us to mention how this proposal can fit multiple lengths. So the program organizer can consider your talk even for a different slot, so you automatically apply for multiple things. How ingenious is that? So thanks to Raphael, like I'm also gonna do that. Second of all, to make your talk stand out, it's important to show the organizer and visualize how that's gonna be. So there are three things we can mention. First, your target audience, who you're planning to address. What is the takeaway? Like if they leave your talk, what do you want them to remember? The third thing is, how can you get there? Like for example, if you want some beginners to understand this framework, How are you going to do this? Is it like live coding, examples? Or if you want to bring across the message of mentoring is good to senior technical leads, what are you going to do? Like with examples, stories? The more the organizers can visualize how much value your talk is going to bring to the conference, I think the easier it is for your proposal to get in. And last but not least, leverage on your own experience, because that's very unique. That's interesting to a lot of people. And hopefully you can relate to the audience a little bit more too. Now, that's a lot of build-up to do an application, right? And when you apply for something, unfortunately, sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no. So don't get too caught up or too disappointed when that happens. It's okay to apply to other places if it didn't work out. Because chances are, it's not like your proposal is not good. Sometimes maybe the target audience didn't match. Your audience is targeting more advanced audience, or they just have too many applications for that time. So yeah, don't give up. So we talked about how to not be afraid. Now let's move on to how to get better at this. I love this lean startup model. Who here read this book about lean startup? Yay! Like, I love this thing because I can put this in every single talk I give. You'll see why. So 4 steps here, very scientific. So the first step is build. How do we build a talk that is good? Do me a favor here. Pick a topic that you're interested in. Because between the time that you put in the proposal to the time you actually give the talk, it's several months' time. If you think that when you give the proposal, like I can talk about this for 5 minutes, maybe, not that interested. When you're standing on stage giving that talk, you'll fall asleep. So make sure, apply for something that you're interested in. So rubber ducking can be a technique for programming, huh? So you talk to your duck and try to go through this problem that you're trying to solve, this bug, and then gradually you find the answer, even without talking to a human being. So that technique can also be done for a talk. You can use that technique to come up with the initial structure of your talk. Don't worry, I'm not blanking out here. I just actually need water. So rubber ducking. And next up, there is finding a good feedback crew. We mentioned that briefly. So a good feedback crew is like someone who can co-review your talk for you. And that's really valuable. And it's not a cheerleading squad. It's not someone they're like, oh, go Yenny, excellent, everything's great. No, that's not very helpful. It's people who can critically tell you, hey, like these 2 slides don't really make sense. Or like, there are no transitions between these 2 points. Can we work a little bit more on it? People like that. And why is that important too? Because these people also vet your jokes. They tell you when your jokes are lame and shouldn't be telling that on stage. So very important. Now, last but not least is to know your audience. So if you give a talk, make sure you know, are you giving it to beginners, someone who's more senior, is it a non-technical audience? That's also very important for you to tune your talk a little bit. Otherwise, they fall asleep. Now, as Nicola mentioned to us, right? Dry run, dry run, dry run, right? Very important, because you see the speakers on stage and they shine for 30 minutes. You don't know what is underneath the iceberg. They probably practice for like 20 times in their toilet. So, this is something that a lot of speakers do. They put in a lot of effort in it. And most people are not naturals. They get better because they practice. So that's something we should do after we build the talk. Now we get to the measure part, right? How do we know how good we're doing? We have already gathered some feedback from your feedback crew before your actual presentation, so that's great. Now, after the actual talk, right, you can also source that from your audience. I know that for this conference, there is a feedback form, so I would really appreciate it if you fill that out as well, so that can help me improve next time. And also one way you can do talking to the audience is not, how did everything go? Like everybody would say, oh, good, they don't really tell you much because they want to be polite, right? So one way you can ask is be more specific. You can ask them, hey, I aim to use this talk to encourage more people to get into public speaking. How well I'm faring on this part. Then you can get a little bit more information and not get this oh, good answer. Now, another thing is to watch yourself present. I know sometimes that can be a little bit difficult, and I understand most people hate their own voices, but this is something that is really, really valuable. Because if you want to cut down on these so, all of that filler words, watching yourself present and saying all these words is the best motivation for you to cut it out. So I would highly recommend that. Another thing on the Q&A, right? It's great to get these questions that is in I don't know, because this is the things that people are interested in, and this is how you learn. This is how you can incorporate more of that content in the next talk that you give. So take notes on what kind of questions came up, and that's usually what makes your next talk better. Now we come into this learn part. It's very interesting because, why do we need to talk about learn? You just get all of that information into the next talk and, voila, that's good. But this is actually inspired by an incident 3 weeks ago. Ended up taking feedback is not as easy as you might think, right? It's easier said than done. So brace yourself for taking feedback. So here's the situation of what happened. I did a dry run for one of my talks that I practiced for a long time, and then one of my colleagues told me, I think your presentation style was hectic, unlike usual. Slow down a bit. So I was like, oh, bummer, I practiced for so long, and okay, my style is hectic, so I was a little bit salty about it, because I really spent the time to practice and stuff. So this is still something that I'm trying to get a hang on, is to have a different mindset. So in this book, Mindset, they detail 2 mindsets, which I think I can learn from. It's this fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Now, I can give you an example in this scenario I presented, what a fixed mindset is and what a growth mindset is. Fixed mindset is exactly how I felt, right? Bummer, I totally messed it up. Now everybody thinks that I'm an idiot. I should hide in a corner. So that's the fixed mindset. You think of now, now you're doing a bad job. But if you go the other way, right, think about that. I'm thankful for my colleague who told me that these tips, now my real talk is gonna go so much better. And this is what I'm striving for, because what's gonna bring you closer to your goal to get better at public speaking? The growth mindset, right? So yeah, I'm working on that too. Now, if people give you feedback, one thing you can extract from it is the actual action items, right? So for my colleague, he's nice. He told me that one thing you can do is try to slow down the talk. So that's one action item. But if you do these kind of feedback sessions, right before you present, you might get overwhelmed by all these suggestions. So one thing at a time, identify the big things, work on those first, and then pick up the rest. Last but not least is to repeat, right? So you have all these learnings. Now you can reuse your talk in different occasions. You consolidate the Q&A, for example, you get questions from the audience, you put them into the next talk, you apply to the next conference giving the same talk and do it over and over again. And that's how you can consolidate your learnings and do better next time, even with another talk. So last section is the practical stuff, talking about where can we get started. So public speaking opportunities are all around you. Think about stand-ups, team meetings, presentations at your company, or even doing a speech at a party. All of that are opportunities for you to practice as long as you can get the spotlight on you. And second of all, think about what kind of opportunities you want. Is it an internal event at your company or external at a conference? Because for me, I get intimidated talking to people I know. I feel like they're more judgy. And for external people, I don't know you all, so it makes me feel more comfortable actually talking to people I don't know. So I would like to know you all, but then maybe after the talk, it would make me feel better. And there are also conferences labeled first-time speaker friendly. These are great because the environment is going to be even more supportive. And some of them even offer mentoring advice. They pair you up with a mentor that can help you prepare the slides and deliver the actual talk. So I think those are great helps. And also local meetups, or if you're a minority in tech, there are a lot of meetups for those too. So those are even more supportive environments. Now, the last thing is, people ask me, do you think it's a good idea to do public speaking classes or improv, drama, all of that? I think it's a pretty good idea, except don't get too tied up by them, because if you want to swim, right, you don't go run. If you want to get better at conference speaking, you do more of conference speaking and not the other things. And so even if you don't rock in improv or drama, it's okay. You can still try it out, and you will be successful. So this is basically the content, and quick recap is, we talked about the introduction, a video on me interviewing my coworkers, and then why we should pursue public speaking, how that can increase our confidence and make us feel better and contribute more in team meetings, how to overcome the fear, making us less nervous on stage, how to get better at the thing about public speaking, and also realistically, how do we get started? So these are the things we covered. And like a special thanks to all these references that I've used to include it in my talk's content. And if there is any takeaway, like if you forget about everything that we just said, if you just have one message I want you to take away is, I encourage you to apply for a public speaking opportunity within these 2 weeks and get started now, because if you want it, why not now? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the amazing talk. Any question? We have 5 minutes for questions. Yes, please.
Great talk, thank you. One of the things that I've seen is some people who think about whether they could give a talk are intimidated because they say, well, I didn't write the book on this, therefore I can't speak about it. Mm-hmm. And other people say, oh, I heard about this cool thing, and I should talk about it in order to learn more. Mm-hmm. So can you address kind of the different mindsets and how you get from one to the other? Mm-hmm.
Like on the first example, I think it's still valuable to share your ideas, except especially if you read a book and you try to learn something, right? You can share how you're learning using that resource. I think a lot of people are in the same shoes as you are. So I think sharing that knowledge is still valuable, and there'll still be people who are interested. Yeah.
Hi, it's me. Thank you for the talk, very nice and inspiring. I was wondering, what is your position regarding storytelling when doing public speaking, and how to prepare what you have to say as a story, and if you have any opinion on the preparation of the voice, because I hear it's important. I did something on that, but I'm not using that when I'm doing public speaking, so I want to hear what you think about that.
Mm-hmm. So on the first point on storytelling, I also think that it's more compelling when you introduce stories to the talk. That's why I also try to tell a little bit of the stories, especially sharing your own unique experiences. I think that can make the talk more interesting. As for preparing for the voice, I don't have too much experience on that, but one public speaking class I attended is on the power pose and how you can prepare your state of mind for public speaking. I'm not going to do a demonstration because you look really ugly when you're trying to do that. So I'm not going to do that in public. But it's basically like holding a pen in your mouth and trying to do a dominant pose, right, to make yourself feel more powerful as part of the preparation to make you feel more confident before talking to people. So that might be something you want to try out. Thank you.